3 years ago, my marriage was on the verge of collapse. My husband, Vincent, and I had been together for 8 years, and the first few years had been a dream. We were inseparable, like two pieces of the same puzzle. Our evenings were filled with laughter, endless discussions about everything and nothing, crazy projects that we considered with the naive certainty that nothing could ever keep us apart. We liked the same films, the same music, and we understood each other with a simple look. But over time, reality set in. Not suddenly, no, but insidiously, like a mist that slowly infiltrates and obscures the landscape without us realizing it. Daily life had taken over. Responsibilities had piled up. Work, bills, family obligations. Over the years, our priorities had changed, without us realizing it. Light conversations had become rarer, replaced by functional exchanges. Did you pay for the electricity? I came home late. I forgot to take out the trash. We're going to your parents' house on Sunday, don't forget. We didn't argue violently. There were no screams, no slammed doors, no heartbreaking scenes. Maybe it was even worse. Because instead, there was a heavy silence, an invisible but very real distance. We had become strangers under the same roof. The tender gestures had evaporated. Before, Vincent always kissed me on the forehead before leaving for work. A simple reflex, a gentle and reassuring habit. Then, one day, he forgot. And I didn't say anything. Another evening, while we were having dinner across from each other, I realized that he wasn't looking at me like he used to. His gaze, once sparkling with affection, had become that of a man absorbed by 1,000 other concerns. And I knew mine was no different. A gap had grown between us, slowly but surely. We lived together, but we didn't live anymore one for the other. I had considered separation. Several times. Some evenings after a long day, I wondered if this was the end of our story. If we had simply reached the end, like those couples who sincerely love each other but end up losing each other. But each time, I pushed the thought away. Maybe out of fear. Fear of the unknown, of rebuilding everything elsewhere, alone. Fear of having wasted these years for nothing. Or maybe because deep down, I still hoped. A spark. A sign that all was not lost. It was raining torrents that day. A cold, heavy rain, the kind that transforms the streets into broken mirrors and soaks tired souls. I had just come home from work, exhausted. My day had been long, punctuated by the usual obligations and annoyances. A demanding client, late files, a superior who expected immediate results. All this stress was weighing on my shoulders, and all I wanted to do was collapse on the couch and not move. As I pushed open the door of the house, I saw Vincent. Sitting on the couch, absorbed in his phone, a vacant look on his face. One more evening where we would coexist without really being together. "Hi," I said, more out of reflex than waiting for a response. "Hey," he replied without looking up. Nothing unusual. Nothing surprising. And yet, this banality weighed on me more than ever. Then a noise caught my attention. A moan. Weak. Almost drowned out by the sound of the pouring rain. I stopped. I strained my ears. Outside, beyond the door, another moan, louder this time. Intrigued, I frowned and headed towards the entrance. As I opened the door, an icy gust whipped my face, and my gaze fell on a figure huddled under the awning. A dog. A mixed shepherd, soaked to the skin, his coat stuck to his emaciated skin. He was shaking violently, curled up on himself, as if trying to disappear into the shadows. His golden eyes, full of distress, met mine. My heart sank. There was no necklace, no sign that it belonged to anyone. Just this look, intense, both fearful and pleading. Without thinking, I reached out my hand. The dog backed away, frightened, his body tense with fear. Slowly, I whispered to him, "I'm not going to hurt you." As if he understood that I was not a threat, he stopped backing away. Slowly, carefully, he moved his nose towards my soaked fingers. "What are you doing?" Vincent's voice startled me. I turned around. He was standing in the doorway, arms crossed, looking surprised and slightly annoyed. "This dog, he's lost or abandoned," I explained, my voice trembling. "We have to help him." Vincent sighed. "We can't keep him." His tone was clear, as if he had already closed the case, as if he refused to allow an unexpected event to disrupt our well-oiled routine. But I couldn't close that door and pretend I didn't see him. "Just for the night," I insisted. "He's going to freeze to death outside." Vincent hesitated. He glanced at the dog, then at me. I saw in his eyes this resistance that was specific to him, this rational side which contrasted with my impulsiveness. But I also saw a flaw, a tiny breach in his refusal. He sighed deeply, then looked up at the sky, as if wondering how he had ended up there. "Well, but only this night." A shiver of relief passed through me. I turned to the dog and whispered to him, like a secret, "Come on, big guy. You are safe now." At that precise moment, I didn't yet know that this decision would change everything. Nor for him. Nor for me. Nor for us. We dried him gently, gently rubbing his soaked fur with an old towel. He was shivering, curled up on himself, as if he didn't dare believe in this sudden benevolence. Once dry, I prepared a bowl of water and some leftover chicken for him. He sniffed shyly at first, casting cautious glances in our direction, before deciding to eat. Every bite seemed like a victory over fear. In a corner of the living room, I installed an old blanket, hoping that he would find some semblance of comfort there. He went to bed, but his gaze never left us. He looked at us with the intensity of broken souls, as if trying to figure out if we were trustworthy. Vincent had returned to his phone, absorbed by a screen that seemed more familiar to him than to me in months. But I couldn't take my eyes off this animal. There was something inside him. A silent pain. An almost human resignation. And suddenly the thought hit me with disconcerting clarity. That dog was me. Like him, I felt lost. Like him, I had learned not to expect too much from others. We were two lost souls under the same roof, hoping for a sign, an outstretched hand. The next morning, as I opened the door to go out, I froze. Max, yes, we had just called him that, was sitting in the doorway. He was not trying to escape, nor was he trying to enter. He was waiting, as if silently asking permission to stay. That's where everything changed. Days became weeks. Max has integrated himself into our daily lives without noise, like a calming presence that we end up accepting without even realizing it. He was not noisy, not intrusive. He was content to be there. Every morning he greeted me with genuine joy, his tail gently beating the ground whenever he saw me coming down the stairs. Every evening, he came to lay his head on my knees, as if he understood all the torments that I no longer knew how to express out loud. Vincent remained in the background. He fed Max when necessary, but never lingered. He didn't hurt her, but he kept a distance, as if he refused to get attached. "This is not our dog," he repeated every time I tried to raise the possibility of him staying with us permanently. But Max, with that silent patience that only belongs to animals, began to slowly crack my husband's armor. One night I woke up earlier than usual and, unable to go back to sleep, I went down to the living room. What I saw froze me in place. Vincent was there, sitting on the sofa, in the dark. Max was lying at her feet, his head resting on her knees. And my husband caressed him absently. His gaze was lost in space, as if he were elsewhere, far from the tensions and heavy silences of recent months. I hesitated to speak, for fear of breaking this fragile moment. But finally, I whispered, "He likes you." Vincent jumped, caught at fault, like a child surprised in a burst of tenderness. Then, after a short silence, he shrugged his shoulders. "He's quiet." It was the first time in so long that we had exchanged anything other than small talk about bills or work. A suspended moment, where something tenuous, almost imperceptible, had just been reborn. Max has transformed our daily lives in ways we never imagined. At the beginning, it was just small adjustments. taking him out morning and evening, remembering to fill his bowl, finding a space for his basket. But very quickly, these new habits became rituals. He forced us to go out, to walk together, to breathe fresh air instead of locking ourselves into our stifling routine. Before him, we lived side by side without really seeing each other. Our days were punctuated by work, obligations, the heavy silences that had settled between us. But with Max, you had to go out, no matter the weather or how tired you were. So we walked, at first in silence, each lost in our thoughts. Then, little by little, without us realizing it, we started talking again. First from him. Have you seen how he stops at every tree? He has his own way of choosing where he wants to go. He looks happy, don't you think? Then, everything and nothing. Our days. Our memories. Light, innocuous subjects, but which, by dint of following one another, ended up recreating a bridge between us. One night, while Max was sleeping peacefully at our feet, breathing regularly, Vincent made a gesture that shocked me. He reached out his hand and took mine. A simple touch, almost shy, as if he was rediscovering what it felt like to touch me for no specific reason. Do you think he found us for a reason? He whispered. I felt my throat tighten. I hadn't thought about this until then, but hearing him ask the question made it obvious. Maybe he saved us, I replied with a smile. Vincent nodded thoughtfully. It wasn't just a random sentence thrown out. We both knew what it meant. Max had reminded us of something essential. Love is maintained. It feeds. It's lived. By taking care of him, by giving him a home, we had learned to take care of each other again. He forced us to slow down, to share new moments, to find ourselves in these simple everyday gestures. And today, 3 years have passed, and Max is still here. His muzzle is starting to turn grey, he sleeps more often in the sun, but he is still the same wise and patient dog, a silent witness to our changes. He has become a full member of our family. My marriage. It's not perfect, but he is alive. We learn to communicate, to listen to each other again. There are still arguments, disagreements, but there is also laughter, tender gestures, newfound complicity. And every evening, when I see Vincent caressing Max with a tender smile, whispering a few words in his ear like an old confidant, I know that we have rediscovered something essential. Sometimes love just needs a trigger to bloom again. Sometimes this trigger has 4 legs and a look full of wisdom.